Positional familiarity and role suitability. On today's show, I'll explain both of them. And I will show you a little experiment where I take a certain player, train him, no attribute growth, turn him from an ineffectual playmaker into an accomplished playmaker. Yes, it might sound impossible, but that's the kind of things we do here on Bustthenet. My name is Daljit. Welcome to the show. Okay, so what in the world is positional familiarity? Positional familiarity is actually very easy in this game, right? You've got all kinds of clues in the game that tell you whether a person is suitable for a certain position. And the easiest one is you come to the panel on his profile page, you see all this stuff here, right? It will tell you if he's accomplished, whether he's natural, or whether he's ineffectual, or whether he's a makeshift. In this particular case, he's a natural in two positions, and he's accomplished in another position, which means he was trained in that position, and then he's makeshift in this position. And then your coaches come back and tell you what roles he can play. Now, at this point in time, I don't really care what my coaches think, because this is their interpretation. There's an algorithm in the game that tells you, hey, this is what he is like as an inverted winger. Now, what is really more bizarre is if you take this player and compare him to another player, right? Both of them will come out looking like they both can be inverted wingers, right? This is Tim Parker. This is Shoya Nakajima, inverted winger too, but look at his attributes. So there is nothing else that is more confusing in the whole game than this, right? There have been loads of questions by plenty of people who go into the game, and this is going to throw most of you off. In fact, I don't blame you. Most of you are thrown off by this, right? When you start picking up a game. So when you look at this and you look at him and go like, hey, hang on a minute, Shoya Nakajima is an inverted. The coaches are telling me he can play as an inverted winger. But they said the same thing about Tim Parker. But Tim Parker's attributes are quite bad. How can he play as an inverted winger? And how can this guy play as an inverted winger? It makes absolutely no sense. Positional familiarity and role suitability are meant to be guides in the game to help you out. Positional familiarity is something that a player can be trained for. Right. Over time, he can get better in a certain position, and he can play in that position more effectively. A person who is ineffectual is likely to make mistakes, and this is a reflection of his mental attributes. Role suitability, on the other hand, is slightly different. Role suitability tells you whether a player is good enough for a specific role based on the attributes that he has. Now, this also takes into account positional familiarity. So a player needs to not only have a set spread of attributes for that role, but he has also got to be playing in that position in order for the game to reflect that, he's maybe accomplished in that role. And I will show you examples of this later in the show. I'll have to share a few examples of how I use positional familiarity and role suitability in the game, and I'm going to use it with Kingstonian, which is a side that shouldn't even be in the championship, much less in League 2. But hey, we're there, and we love doing small little impossible things with the side. If you want to see impossible things work in the game, like perhaps Neymar playing a libero, Mbappe playing as a wingback, perhaps 5-star game in and a tactic, then you absolutely need to be following me on Twitch. Details below. Don't forget you can follow my social media accounts as well and stay in the conversation. So for now, let's try and see how we can fit that inverted winger called Mr. Tim Parker into our system. So here in this tactic, I plan to use Parker on an attack duty because what I plan to do here with him is I want to utilize his acceleration, his agility to get away. So understanding this player is more important. Like here in this particular case, I know that he's not going to be very good on support, because once he plays on support, he's going to be a lot closer to other players, especially opposition players. He'll be expected to make himself available in space, control the ball, keep the ball under pressure, do something with the ball, maybe make a crossfield diagonal as an inverted winger. But looking at his attributes, can he do that? So this is where you as a manager, you've got to come in, you've got to understand your own tactic and then understand what is possible with the player. In this particular case, he is more suitable on the break. When there's more space on the pitch, he can use his superior physical traits, superior, and get away from players and hopefully utilize the space that he has to do something with the ball. So that's how I plan to use him within this tactic. What's more interesting is this player, Olumola. In the game itself, the game recommends pressing forward and once forward F9. But within my tactic itself, right, you see here, he's not very good as a complete forward. But what I have been doing in a lot of my games has been to use him as a complete forward in my tactic. Now, in the game itself, we've got play instructions. The play instructions are the ones that we can see. These are the clear indications of what a player can do. Now, this as a side topic, people have come to me and have asked me, okay, if I use the same play instructions with a generic role, will he play like a Mazala? Fact of the matter is they won't, because the thing is, a lot of these roles have been hard-coded. Some of these roles are hard-coded, and they have a bar. They have a high bar because they need a certain level of current ability for the player to actually execute that role properly. One of those roles is the complete forward. And there are some roles that are hard-coded in the way they move, in the way they behave. And these roles, you can't replicate these roles generically using play instructions. So while the play instructions give us an indication of what he might be able to do, it's also important to understand what that role is supposed to do. And the only information we have in the game is the description of that role. Now, here in this description, it says that he has to possess the technical attributes of a DLF, the goal scoring ability of a poacher, the strength and power of a target man. So if I were to look at Mr. Olumola, and all I got to do is go to, there's a page here called Tactics. You will see, looking at deep lying forward, it's checked. Poacher, he's got it. Target man, he's got it. But then again, when we look at complete forward, he's got most of this stuff that says that he can do this role, but he hasn't got enough to have a little green mark on complete forward. The fact of the matter is that he might be missing a few attributes to get him there. And also, his current ability may not be enough for that role. So while it is a good idea to look at a player's PIs, it's not the only thing, right? There are other elements at play here, right? So as far as Olumola was concerned, all I really was interested in him to do in the game was to hold up the ball, literally, right? I want him to hold up the ball. I want him to try some risky passes occasionally. That's taking more risks. I also wanted him to roam, creating space for others, because this is something that I wanted from the role itself. Now, when I look at his attributes, I understood that, this player can do some of that stuff, but he might not be able to pull off the rest. As far as holding up the ball is concerned, he's got the strength to do it. When it comes to roaming, he's only got about 10 for his off the ball, but he's only got 9 for decision making, so he might not always be in the right place at the right time. As far as taking those risky passes, his passing is only 8, his vision is only 9. I didn't think it was going to be possible, but hell, man, he's got very good flair. So he has the ability to do the unexpected. More importantly, he had the acceleration, and he can also dribble, and he knows how to control a ball because of his first touch. So these attributes alone told me, okay, fine, I might be willing to take some chances on this Nigerian player and hope that he can, do something with the role, because I really wanted a role in this tactic which wasn't stuck next to a central defender. I wanted a player that would drop off once in a while, but I didn't want to use a target man, because then they would be looking for him for passes all the time, and he doesn't have jumping reach. So once in a while, it'd be good if they would play passes on the ground and they pass it to him, and he holds up the ball and he brings others into play, and then occasionally look for the diagonal, which is exactly what he did in some of the games. So what are we supposed to do? Should we worry about positional familiarity? Should we worry about role suitability? The only thing you want to worry about in this game is positional familiarity, right? Whether you can play in that position. Then design your tactic. When you have designed your tactic and you know how you want a certain position to work, whether you want the players to hold up the ball here, whether you want somebody attacking the space there, do you want that person to attack the box, or do you want the person to attack the flanks? That's when you start looking at the roles. Then you start shaping your tactic and the way it's going to be playing. Finally, look at the tactic itself to ask yourself the simple question, like, if he's going to be attacking space, how am I going to create that space for him, right? So do I want to play a deeper game where I sit back and I soak players in so that we have space to counter attack? Then perhaps I want him to play as a winger on attack duty on the right flank and bomb down the flanks. Then you have to look at the attributes to take advantage of that space. And the simplest attribute that comes to mind is acceleration, because you want him to get out. Then what do you want him to do with once he gets out? You want him to look out and make the cross, because that's the simplest thing in the whole game. So acceleration and crossing become very important for you. Then he gets out, he gets by to the byline, he crosses. For all that, for all you care, the only attributes that could matter are acceleration and crossing in that case. And what about the guy in front? Well, if we're only hitting on the brake, then all I really want to do with this guy is, acceleration, maybe jumping, reach, and heading and finishing. Maybe I want him to hit the ball. Maybe I just want him to break behind the defensive line and go and score. Then acceleration, finishing, composure. That's it. You see, at the end of the day, the tactics here are very simple. You can make most of the tactics. It's when you start becoming, you start trying to overcomplicate the system. That's when things get really, really messy. Now let's have some fun with positional familiarity. Okay, here we got a player called Estevez. He's only ever played as a wingback. He's never played as a deep line playmaker or even as a DM. According to the coaches, basically he's unconvincing as a defensive midfielder and he's awkward in that role of his. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to train him. And we're going to just see how he improves over time. So we've gone from October to January. There's been no significant improvements in his attributes. But our boy in the tactic is now accomplished as a defensive midfielder and now only unconvincing as a deep line playmaker. A marginal change in his role suitability according to the coaches. We've moved into the future. It's now April 2023. Barely 6 months, because we started on Untitled Experiment towards the end of October. And our boy has... we've not seen any jumps in his attributes, right? And if you go to the tactics, he's now a natural as a DM. And he's natural as a deep line playmaker. All the other positions, he can play the other positions as well because of his attributes. So what has changed? What in the world has changed? So basically what happened was his attributes didn't really change, right? But he had those attributes to begin with. Over time, he was trained as a deep line playmaker. He played as a deep line playmaker. He became a natural as a deep line playmaker. When it comes to training, things are pretty straightforward. You can choose to train a player in a new position. All you got to do is retrain him. That's it. Until he becomes a natural, then you're done. But what about roles? Should you give a player a broad-based approach? But if you give a player a broad-based approach, then what about his potential ability? Because a player has got a finite amount of points that you can give him. So if you choose a role that has got a big ass spread, he is not going to gain all the attribute gains in every single category, mental, technical, and physical. That just doesn't, the game doesn't work that way. You're not suddenly going to see 20s everywhere, right? Because that player has a finite amount of points that he can earn. If you move him to a new position, then there's be a reweighting of those attributes over time. So what I recommend most people should do in the game is, if you're not sure, then go into the game, choose the role you're using in the tactic. That's the easiest approach. You can't go wrong because his attributes will improve over time and you'll be fine. If you're a player like me who loves to change tactics every other Wednesday and then change another tactic every other Friday, where I love to do all kinds of wonderful things with my tactics and I love to play Neymar as a libero, then that approach won't work for me because I have a style of play and my style revolves around specific attributes that I need most of my players to have, which allows me to have very fluid interchanging positions on the pitch in terms of my tactics. For that, I know the attributes I need. And then when I go and look at a player, I decide which role he needs to elevate the attributes that he's missing. So that is a slightly different approach. It's a harder approach to pull off, and sometimes you can go wrong. Ultimately, the thing here is a player has got a finite amount of points that he can earn. So if you choose a broad-based training program, it will work when they're young. It will work probably until they're 24, right? Because you'll see a nice balanced growth in their development. However, once they are 28, once they are 30, that approach may not work very well, because then you're going to start thinking to yourself, okay, what am I going to do? Because you won't see attribute gains. Then you're going to have to start becoming a bit more focused with your roles. Maybe a player is over 30 years old, and you wanted to train him as a complete forward. His physicals are going to start dropping. So why don't you just train him as a poacher? He's got fewer attributes. At least he can still finish. You still get some of the attributes that he needs to do to pull off that role. What if you're a relegation bound team and you want to survive, and the only way you're going to survive is by making sure that your players spend more time working on physical attributes? You don't want so many you don't want such a big spread, but what you want to do is you want to focus on the attributes that could help you stave off relegation. So you're looking at physical attributes more than anything else. So you're choosing now roles that can have a bit more of those physical attributes, and you're also looking for a general training program that will give that team those attributes that they so sorely lack. Ultimately, you as a manager, you're gonna have to make your decisions based on that. Well, I hope you found today's video useful. If you have any questions, you know where to find me. You can always find me in the usual places. You guys, I appreciate all the support. Take care. I'll catch up with you soon. Bye-bye. Who said we don't do this kind of goals in the game? Who says those kind of goals don't happen in Football Manager? They happen all the freaking time.